Okay. Have we started? Can anybody hear me? Have you popped something in the chat so that I know that you can hear me? Great, we've got something coming up. Oh, great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for commenting. Okay, great. So I know that you can hear us. Welcome to this webinar. You're very welcome to be here. We're going to be talking today about what is action learning and how does it work, not only a kind of chatty webinar stage, but also a live taster session where we can talk about, we can get the experience of what action learning feels like in real life. A lot of people struggle to get a sense of what action learning is until they've tried it. So hopefully that's what you're going to experience today. You've tried the chat function. You can use that at any time during the session to tell us what's on your mind, any questions that you have, and one of us will pick it up either as I'm talking or as we go through to a Q&A session in a little while. This session is recorded, so we can share the recording with you later, but we won't be recording the taster session. So in that session, you can speak freely and relax and know that it's just for the people who are live there in that session. And I think that's everything. Afterwards, we'll send you a follow-up email with the slides and the recording. And the process for today, what we're going to cover is an introduction to action learning, something about the origins, where it's come from, how it works, what it can do. Then we'll go into the live taster where you give it a try, and then we'll come back together after that to hear about your experience and think about next steps from today. Okay, so some context. Let me try and change slides. I hope you can see that. This is a little infographic to tell you a little bit about who we are. We're Action Learning Associates, the #1 provider of action learning facilitator training in the UK, and we also do a lot of action learning facilitation as well, as you can imagine. We're the largest independent network of action learning facilitators in the UK, and that's our USP really, I suppose, that as well as having lots of other experiences and a range of experiences under our belt, our specialism really is action learning. It's the core of what we all do, and so we have a lot of experience in putting that into practice in lots of different contexts across the non-profit sector, the private sector, the public sector, and as you can see from this diagram, all around the world as well. Over the past 27 years, actually, that number's out of date. Excellent. So that's us. And on the call here, leading today, are the three of us. So I'm Daisy Bland, that sort of romantic-looking one in the middle. Need a new photo. I'm Director at Action Learning Associates alongside Charlotte. My background is in the non-profit sector, principally, actually, in housing and homelessness services, also NHS mental health services. And then in the last 15 years, I've specialised into people development with a particular interest in action learning. And also in neuroscience and mindfulness and psychoanalysis, and that's sort of the different disciplines I'm involved in. Charlotte, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my background is learning development, operational leadership, mainly in corporate sector. So I've worked in some big organisations, professional services wise, like Centrica and Everything Everywhere, Irwin Mitchell, one of the big solicitor firms. And ultimately, I've spent a lot of time helping leaders, teams and organisations navigate change, transformation, but also like that leadership. How do you get through that as a leader and also build sort of that high performing culture? So a lot of leadership development programs I've designed, delivered, using action learning and ultimately to underpin and embed a lot of the, I guess, the tools and techniques that you learn in theory, but how you put it into practice and then sharing that best practice. So yeah, that's my background.
Nick, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I work as a psychological coach and organisation development consultant. Most of my experience has been in, if you like, the beyond profit sector. So it's been with charities, public sector, international development. I specialise in leading and influencing change in organisations, working with individuals and teams as they're working through complex change at the moment. And action learning often forms part of that because it's a great way of giving people opportunity to think through complex issues together. So that's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. And the reason we've got such a rich team today of us here facilitating is so that we can draw from all our different experiences to answer your questions, and also break out into smaller groups and facilitate separate action learning sessions so that each of you has a chance to participate fully and experience the full power of the format. Good. Okay. Can I check? Is my camera on, Nick? Because I can't see myself, but that's fine. Okay, good. You can see me. Fine. Okay, let me move to the next slide. I want to tell you briefly a little bit about action learning. I'm working on the assumption, oh, excuse me, that slide's gone. I'm working on the assumption here that the people on the call are starting from the beginning with action learning. I know some of you do have experience because I recognize some of the names, but I'm gonna start from the foundations and give a brief introduction to what it's all about, with help from Nick, and we'll go from there so that you're prepared with everything you need to know to try action learning after this. So where's it come from? This man on the screen here is Reginald Revens, who is credited with creating action learning. He was an amazing person, with kind of his finger in lots of pies, a real polyglot. He was an athlete, a serious athlete, as you can see, an Olympic medal winning athlete in the long jump. He was a professor of astrophysics working in Cambridge in a lab that went on to win a Nobel Prize. And he had a sort of whole, I don't know if you call it his second or third career, later in his life as a leader in learning and development. And he was working in the National Coal Board in the 1940s when he created the format of action learning. And it came out of his observation that when he was seeing people away on learning and development experiences or training, they would watch the kind of whiteboard, the people writing on the blackboard. And what he noticed is that the learners would switch off after a certain amount of time. They could only take in so much from traditional theoretical teaching with an expert at the front of the room. What he noticed is when people really came alive and what they really seemed to take from these sessions together was in the bar afterwards or in the coffee breaks in between, where people doing similar roles could get together and learn from each other, share challenges, share experiences, share learning. And that was where the real energy was in the sessions that he observed. So he tried to bottle that. And he was really a pioneer in what we now think of as experiential learning. Down the line in the 1980s, experiential learning became much more established, and there are lots of theories now that back that observation that Reg had, that people have more capacity to learn actually through experience than they do from theory, from being taught. And that's what that action learning is trying to do. So he went on, he took action learning out of the context of the Coal Board and into the NHS and beyond, out into the world, and established it powerfully there, and that's the sort of legacy we continue today, the same format. What he was able to evidence is that in that original coal context is that where he introduced action learning, the pits where they were using action learning were able to demonstrate not only higher productivity than the ones where the action learning wasn't being used, but also a higher safety record. That's to say fewer people dying in the mines. So that was the sort of starting point, and that's where action learning has grown from. Okay, Nick's going to tell us a little bit about what happens in an action learning session, which is what we're going to try later in this webinar.
Good, thanks Daisy. And when Daisy's mentioned we're going to have a go at doing action learning together in smaller groups, if you've never done this before, don't panic. It's just an experiment. So it's a chance to give you an exposure to something, and we'll see what you make of that. Typically, action learning sets, a set in action learning language is a group. It's usually a group of something like 5 to 8 peers. It could be smaller, 5 to 6 is kind of optimal. And the idea is that people have opportunity as a small group to think through issues together, issues that are real and important to them. Typically, they might meet something like 4 to 6 sessions, so like 4 to 6 times to do action learning together. And I'll say a bit in a moment about what doing action learning looks like in practice. And typically a set, in other words, a group doing action learning, would have a facilitator. So Daisy, Charlotte and I spend a lot of time training facilitators in action learning as well as facilitating these action learning sets. One of the things you notice in action learning, like in many disciplines, it's loaded with jargon. So a set is a group of people doing action learning together, and a round is when they actually do the action learning thing within a session, which is what we'll be practicing a bit today. Now, when a group starts, at first in an action learning set, you are typically giving people opportunity to get to know each other a bit, because sometimes people have never met before. They could be from different organisations or different parts of the same organisation. And There's opportunity to get to know each other. There'll be typically ground rule setting. So how we're going to choose to work together to bring the best to this and also take the best from it. And when sessions start, as the meeting as a group, typically there'll be something like a check-in, because it may be some time since people have seen each other since a previous session, and a lot of things can happen between sessions. So check-in is a chance to reconnect with each other. Now, if somebody in a previous session is committed to actions as things they will do, because that's the action bit of action learning, there's also opportunity sometimes for them to feed back at the start. Well, this is what I said I would do at the last meeting, and this is what happened when I tried it. And then there's opportunity again to kind of learn from that experience. So the first stage typically in the action learning round itself is we have here bidding to present. Now, bidding in action learning essentially means saying, if I had opportunity to think through an issue today with support from the group, this is the crux of the issue that I would find useful to think through. So each person in the group, they have opportunity to say, if I have the chance to think something through today, this is the thing I find really useful. And each person in the group shares that, and it is at kind of headline level. Present in action learning, it doesn't mean doing a formal presentation. It's not like this with PowerPoint slides and things. Present, it's a bit like those familiar with counselling, it's having a presenting issue. So it's somebody who has opportunity to present the issue they're thinking through and that they would find useful to work on with others. Typical issues in action learning that it's useful for are things which they are real in the experience of the person who wants to think them through. So rather than a hypothetical issue, it's something that's real, it's grounded in their experience. It's something that is important to them, it matters to them, so they're not just talking through something for the sake of it. It's something that Daisy alluded to, it's usually something that's complex. There isn't a simple right or wrong answer to this. If there is, action learning might not be the best way of dealing with. That's probably the, not being an effective use of time. And also something where the individual has at least some opportunity to influence change. So they're not just talking about something out there, it's something real, important, and something that's difficult. Otherwise, they wouldn't bring it to the group, and there's a chance to change something because that's the action bit. Now, if you can imagine in a group, these 5 to 6 people, if you like, each person's had a chance to say in a headline, this is what I'd find useful. What the group needs to then decide is for that meeting, who do they want to give that space to? So if a typical meeting could be something like 3.5 hours, it may be 2, maximum 3 people would have a chance to think through something at that meeting. And that means some people won't at that meeting. So the group decides, who do you want to give space to at this meeting? And the kind of things that influence that could be, is somebody really enthusiastic to think it through now? Is it an issue that's quite urgent? Is it something which the people in the group have shared interest in? I'd love to hear you think through that, because I think I could learn from it as well. Or maybe it's something you think, do you know, I would never have even thought of that. So like a novelty element, but the group decides between them, who do they want to give that space to present in the sense of thinking something through. What would then happen is the facilitator would hand over to the person that the group has chosen, and they have a chance to unpack it a bit more. So I gave you a headline earlier. I want to say a bit more about the issue, in particular the challenges posing for me. And while they do that, the rest of the group just listens. Now, once they've done that, the group then has opportunity to ask what we call here clarifying questions. Now, a clarifying question is usually just a simple point of information. It could be, you mentioned this acronym, what does that mean? Or this person you mentioned, is that your line manager? Is it a peer? So they're usually just simple points of information. And the answers to those questions are for the people asking them, just so they understand just enough to be able to ask. The next stage is these open questions or questions for exploration. This is where there's a shift in the focus in action learning. So it goes from asking questions for my own understanding to posing questions to the person who is the presenter, the one thinking through an issue, to help them to think it through for themselves. So they are facing a challenge, they're trying to think it through, and the other people, the skill is asking questions, a bit like coaching questions, to help that person to think through more deeply, more broadly, in order to move towards some kind of resolution of the issue that they are facing. And in an action learning round, that's when people do it, most of the time is usually spent on these open questions. So it's where people are offering questions to help the person to think it through for themselves. That is very different to offering solutions or suggestions or advice. It's opportunity to receive questions from the presenter and others to offer questions to help them think it through for themselves. Towards the end, we then move on to the action stage, where it's like, and having had a chance to think about this, what will you do? So this is a kind of the action part of action learning. The person has a chance to think through, with support from the group, what are the next steps? What will they now do to influence change in relation to the challenge they've faced? Now, you could say at that stage, the round as such ends. So the group now steps back. They're no longer thinking about the issue. They're no longer posing questions to help the person think it through. They're now stepping back to reflect. And the reflection could involve a number of things. It could be, for instance, the people in the group, they offer reflections to the presenter, the person who's been thinking something through. It could be, I was really impressed by the courage you showed as you were thinking through that with such honesty and a willingness to step into things that sounded like they could be quite daunting for you. It could be, I was really struck by your use of intuition in that. It's like it wasn't just about having data or information available to you. You had a sense of things going on and you're willing to kind of work with that. So these are things to offer to the presenter just to raise awareness for the presenter of what they may have been doing or how they're doing it that may lay outside of their awareness. They could also share reflections themselves. It could be, you know, I found it really hard just to ask open questions and not to give you advice. And I wonder if that's what it's like in my normal work as well. I wonder if I keep telling people what I think the solution is rather than asking questions to help them to think it through for themselves. And this is the process here is about drawing any reflections, like gleaning any learning from this. It could be valuable both in the set, but also in people's wider environments they're working in. There's then an opportunity if they wanted to, for the presenter to make a response to what they've heard. And again, it's not about the issue, it's just what they've heard from their peers. And the process review, from time to time, what you do is you invite the group to step back from the issues of being thinking through to say, how are we doing as an action learning set? So as we think back to these processes and the skills involved, what are we doing well that we want to continue and to build on? And which are the things that could make it even better next time? And if I give a tangible example, it could be a presenter could say, I just felt like I was being offered question after question after question, but very little time to think. So it felt like being bombarded with questions. So how about next time the presenter lets the group know when they're ready for the next question, so they can choose how much time do they want to reflect on it rather than just have to keep responding to questions. So that's improving the process of action learning, if you like, rather than necessarily the immediate issues the group is working with. So I hope that gives you a sense of the process. When we go into these small groups, you don't have to remember all of this. Our role will be to take you as facilitators through these steps, and we will guide you just so you have an experience of doing it and see what that's like for you. Good. Thank you.
Thank you,
Back to
Nick.
Daisy.
Thank you. That's great. And it's funny listening to you. You make it. You explain so clearly, and yet you remind me how much easier it is to get a sense of action learning by trying it. So I'm glad we're going to do that after this as well, to bring it off the page for people. Fantastic. Okay, I want to whiz through a couple more things to give you all a bit of context. Something about the benefits of action learning first. Why do people spend time doing this? As Nick said, a meeting of 3 hours is a big chunk out of a diary. And you know, you're willing to make sure it's value for you, getting value out of that time and out of that money. So why do people do it? We usually think of the benefits of action learning in terms of what does the individual participating get, and also what does the organization, you know, commissioning, sponsoring, allowing that person the time to do it, get from the process. So I'll start with one and then the other. So for the individual, they get, this is not an exhaustive list, but this is some of the things they get. So facilitated insight, that's to say new perspectives and clarity on the toughest challenges that they're facing. A sense of empowerment, that's to say, because action learning is all about what can I do in this scenario, not who can I blame or what's the problem or why is everything so stuck, but what are the levers I can pull in this very challenging scenario or this interesting, important scenario to make change. So it's empowering for the people taking part. People get reflections and alternative approaches from what they hear from their peers in the group. They develop crucial skills, that things like listening properly, asking good questions, giving good feedback, reflecting, developing their self-awareness and their problem-solving skills, all things that make people more effective in lots of roles, particularly in line management roles, actually, but there are a few roles that aren't improved by some of those things. So those are crucial. People develop really powerful networks and relationships through action learning because it's such trust is involved to be vulnerable in this way, to share uncertainty in this way. Close relationships are formed. And if you imagine those networks span out across an organization or between an organization or within a team, it can really help the way people work together. All of that I've said so far builds well-being and motivation in different roles, in different scenarios. People benefit from having the support of their peers and also the challenge from their peers, really tough questions that help them think boldly and more bravely about what they're doing and how they're working. And then all the new ideas and best practice that flow in from listening to other people present about the challenges they're facing, the work that they're doing as well. So that's what the individual gets. What does the organization get for all that precious time? So the relationships that are built, of course, help reduce silo working, right? So you get stronger networks across an organization or within a team or between organizations if it's a sector-wide group, which improves efficiency, improves outcomes, all the things that reducing silo working can do. You can use action learning to build a culture of inclusivity and equity. That's to say, the way action learning is set up, it works because of difference, because each person brings a different perspective, and it's a very flat structure. In that way, it builds a sense of the importance of each individual and what they can bring. So that's very helpful for an organizational culture. Because people are feeling happier in their roles and more motivated in their roles, it contributes to retention statistics, getting people to stick around and enjoy the job that they're doing. You get those skills developed, so people are doing their jobs better, and really tough challenges are faced. So problems get solved better than they would have had it not been for this reflective time. Having members of staff feeling empowered is good for an organisation, that they're better at their jobs and less reliant on leadership to tell them what to do. And the culture of the organisation can shift in that way. If you have a group of a kind of critical mass of staff who are engaged in a process like this, a reflective practice, you build a culture of learning, of growth, not of trying to get it right every time, but of seeing mistakes as opportunities, and a sense of continuous learning, continuous growth. Cultures in that way can be transformed through these relationships and through new ways of working. And if you use action learning in certain ways as a reporting system, and we can talk more about that if that's something that interests you, you can use it to research what's happening. What are the key issues coming up for people that you'd gather that data anonymously to find out what priorities need to be addressed. And then that last point about taking learning beyond theory into practice, I'll maybe talk about on the next slide, because one of the applications of action learning is that. So I'll talk about that in the next slide. So what I want to talk about next is, if you're thinking about using action learning, how might you apply it in your organization? And that number 2 there on this slide, embedding learning programs, picks up from that previous point. So what a lot of people use action learning for is to embed theoretical learning. So let's say you're running an induction program, a management development program, a leadership program. Action learning built into the course alongside taught content can really help embed that learning, because people are using real life examples in the action learning to bring the theory to life and try it out in their real life jobs. So that sort of speaks a little bit to point 1 and 2. How do people use action learning? Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but it's some ideas to get you thinking. Team building, cross-functional collaboration is another core use of action learning, because of that ability the ability it has to break down silos to build networks. Innovation and process improvement, for reasons we've already covered. A space to think about working in new ways is very powerful if you want to innovate. Number 5, strategic problem solving for complex issues. Similar again there, having space to think about those grainy issues, not just always working on the back foot in an impulsive way, but stopping and thinking strategically. What are the perspectives I'm missing here? What are the points of view I've not considered? What are my blind spots in the way I'm approaching a certain challenge? And what can the people in the group help me see that I'm not seeing? Other organizations use action learning for employee engagement and retention programs, for reasons we've discussed. For shifting culture, let's say you have a merger or a difficult process of restructure, something like that, or a culture that's got a bit stuck. Action learning can help shift things forward and help cultures be renewed by the approach of reflection and continuous learning. And this last point we've included, although there are many more applications, is this something around succession and talent development. So, you know, if you want to develop the great people you've got in your organization and help stretch them further, this can be a very powerful way of doing it. Okay, I'm keen to stop talking so that we can go to the give you guys a chance to ask questions and also go to our tasters session. One more slide, which is something about the value of having a trained facilitator in action learning. Some of you may have come across action learning before, I hope with an excellent facilitator who showed you the power of the process. But there is a risk sometimes that, I mean, some people hear about action learning and think that it sounds simple, which it does, that's the intention, but they give it a go without proper training, and that can be damaging, not only because they get a bad experience of action learning, but it can feel quite psychologically unsafe. You can have one person dominating the discussion, you can have a lack of accountability, a process that kind of collapses into discussion rather than proper reflective practice, and lots of missed opportunities. So these are some of the reasons we really support the importance of proper training in action learning facilitation, and we really want you to experience really good facilitation, really good action learning, so that a good facilitator can do the things on this slide. So setting up a proper contract so people know who's in the group, what's it going to cover, what are they committing to, that the space can be structured and psychologically safe. They can teach the core skills needed to use the process well and then role model them, promote all the diverse perspectives in the group, and keep it constructive, handle complex group dynamics, and support those accountable actions to make it a really impactful process. Okay, you've definitely heard enough from me. Are there any questions at this point before we get to the practical stage of this taster session?
There's one come up in the chat, and that was around the bidding round, and ultimately, how do you get the I guess the appropriate prioritization of who goes first, and how to help the group decide that as well, in terms of managing that process.
Yeah, Nick, do you want to take that one? You're nodding.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, because you could have a range of people who also I'd find it really useful to discuss this. And then if you just hand over to the group and say, look, make a choice, that you can find everyone just kind of looking at each other, partly sometimes out of politeness. I mean, who do we choose or not choose? I think in my experience, if you give them group a moment, you could be notify them in advance if it's the first time we've done this, just to say there'll be opportunity to think through something that's really important for you. And then as a group, we'll choose who has space in this particular meeting to do that. It means those who have a more reflective style, that we've had a chance to think about that first. If you haven't done that at the start, you can invite people, just spend a couple of minutes, just let's have a think for a minute of all the stuff that's going on for you at the moment. If you did have opportunity to present, in the sense of thinking something through today, what would you find most useful? So it's kind of giving people a chance to think about that rather than just coming up with something. And I would offer the group some, if you like, sample criteria that might help them in that discussion. So say, as we think about this, making a choice, have a think about the level of energy. And what we might do, for instance, in a bid, somebody might say, well, I would love to think through, I've got a conflict in my team at the moment, I have no idea how to resolve it. And I'd find it really helpful. I could think through that, and on a scale of say 1 to 5, or it could be 1 to 10, I think just saw in the chat, this is how much energy or an enthusiasm I have to do that today. So it gives the people in the group a sense of, you know, where are people at in terms of the desire to do it in that session. Again, I'd invite them to pay attention to, are any of the things that people have mentioned, are they urgent? Is a sense of imminence? It's like, I've got a meeting coming up this week, now would be a great time to do it. There could be something about a shared interest. It's like, well, we'd love to hear you think it through because it's a similar thing we're all facing. It could be over a period of time, has everybody had opportunity to present, which goes back to that equity principle. So you're wanting to create space for everyone in the group over time to have had a chance to think through an issue. It could be, well, this person hasn't had a chance to think through yet, how about we give them the space this time? And by offering the group a range of criteria they can use to make the choice, what I found is the groups are typically able to have a more nuanced conversation than to choose, which will be different to just when you say to group, okay, so choose someone.
Thanks, Meg. Fab, are there any other questions lurking? Anything that doesn't feel clear?
No.
No? Good. Charlotte, shall I hand over to you then?
Yep, go for it.
Okay.
All right, so you're going to get the opportunity now to experience action learning, or if you've already done it, to be participating in it. So we're going to break out into 3 rooms, and you'll have myself, Daisy and Nick facilitating. You will also have an opportunity, so while I'm talking right now and while we set up the rooms, think about, is there a particular topic or challenge or an idea? It can be anything around what's, I guess, on your brain or on your mind at the moment. And we'll go through a bidding round to understand who would like to present. So get your thinking caps on while I talk the rest through. But it is structured, it flows through from a curiosity and not control. So the key thing for me is keeping those open questions, thinking around how do you help the individual that's presenting. If you're thinking about, okay, what can I present on? You can think about it in the sense of, are you got a team issue? Have you got a career decision you need to make? Have you got a challenge or a change or influence, or just an idea that space would be helpful to think about? In terms of questions, again, just so you like keeping it really open, you could use things like, what's the real challenge here for you? What's stopping you from taking the next step? How does success look like? And who could actually help you with that? Again, it's trying to get that person to really think about their particular topic and, you know, quite broadly around it to sort of really understand what's the challenge and where they need to go to. The other critical part is we will ask for reflections. And again, for those that are not used to sort of giving reflections and feedback in this way, it's an opportunity to reflect but not fix. So this is about things like what you might say is something, what struck me about what you shared was X, Y, Z, or what I noticed about your thinking was X, Y, and Z, or actually, what did you learn from the process? What came up for you in that process? It doesn't have to be anything more than that. I guess the key part is a little bit of ground rules. So again, in the breakout rooms, we won't be setting these up, but there's an element of confidentiality, you know, respect everybody, be open, be honest, and please put your cameras on. This is your opportunity to connect and meet other like-minded people as well. So we will now go into our break rooms, and then we'll be in there for about 40 minutes. And then we'll come back to the main room, and if there's any other questions that have come up, we'll answer it, and then we'll wrap up for the afternoon.
Brilliant. Any questions from that before we go, everyone? No. I can't see the chat, actually. Let's see.
One question's just come up there around, do we offer individual feedback to set members? So as part of the process review, you could offer feedback at that point, or actually you'd help them reframe the questions in the moment, because you'd get more, I guess, emphasis and more support, and people will then recognise the difference between leading questions and what is an open question. It helps them in that way. Cool. Right. Well, let's get you headed off to breakout rooms, and then we'll come back and talk through that.
I think another question just flashed up in the chat. Just check.
An opportunity to talk about going through the training with us. Yes, we will talk about that when we come back to the room, Dan. Thanks. Okay.
We're just creating the rooms every 2 seconds.
And if anyone's eating their lunch and wanting to just munch while they listen, that's fine too. It is lunchtime after all.
Any more questions from anyone just while Priya's setting up the rooms? me as the
Okay, so you
countdown.
should be able to join the rooms now, and we will kick people into them.
Great, thanks.
Right, Daisy, Charlotte, are you able to go into the rooms?
Yeah, well, yes. Nick went into my room.
Okay.
I'm going into the room 3
So
now.
Nick was room 3, so you swap with him.
Priya, can you hear us all?
I can.
Great.
Did you want me to just close the rooms or
Yeah,
let
why don't
them?
you, well, actually, I see what you mean. If Charlotte's still working, maybe we'll give them another moment
Yeah.
to come back.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just let people gather over the next minute or so.
Hi, Daisy.
Welcome back, everyone. I will share the slides again, shall I? I'm assuming you can't see them right now.
I can't see the slides at the moment.
You can't?
No.
No, okay. I'll share them again.
Now I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Charlotte, shall I hand to you?
Yep, no problem. All right. Well, thank you everyone for taking part in that. I hope you got a flavour of what action learning is and how it sort of can really help individuals and teams sort of explore some of the challenges they face in a really supportive environment. I guess so quite often the hardest challenge is to change context into questions, or how do you create an open enough question often to really help that. So it's learning for everybody. But in terms of, if you're interested in terms of how we can support moving forward and what we actually do from an action learning perspective, then ultimately these are the few things we do. So we can come in and help organisations develop their facilitators. We offer facilitator learning. You can do that on an open course as well, which is available on our website, but we come in-house and do that. We also work with organisations to offer action learning sets. So if you don't have facilitators and you actually want to pilot action learning, we can come in and deliver that for you, and then ultimately help you craft how do you then roll that out across the company. Where would you find most value in terms of applying action learning across your organisation? If you are a trained facilitators, there is a few things that you can already do. We do offer a masterclass. Myself and Nick are running the next one in September. And that's for everyone that's been through sort of the foundation facilitator training to come back, and ultimately we'll go through some additional team dynamic skills. We look at then how do you implement it in organisations. We look at alternative methods of action learning and how do you build your skill set so you can add more creativity and variety into it. We also give you the opportunity then to sort of explore what are the challenges you faced, and we use that as a network of facilitators to manage that as well. We can offer supervision as well if you've got a group of facilitators as part of your, I guess, approach to rolling it out in an organisation. We then offer supervision and support to help them embed their practice into organisations. And then the other element is, again, we're all experts of this in different organisations, as we've got a number of associates, but we're there to help you from a leadership development perspective. If you want to build action learning into a leadership development offering, we can help you craft that, or we can craft it and deliver it for you. So we work really collaboratively with leaders of different businesses. What's on the next slide?
No, okay.
Next slide, Davey.
I didn't put a slide about questions, though. People might want to jump in after what you've said. But other than that, it's just these last bits to wrap up.
I saw a question just ping up and then it flashed off again. I think, was it Leanne, was it? I can't see it in the chat.
Yeah. So the masterclass is open to people who have done facilitate training. It doesn't have to have been with us, but who have facilitated action learning sets in organisations and things like that. If you're not sure if it's right for you, you can book a call with myself, Daisy, and we can basically chat through to find out what the best approach is for yourself. So yeah, I think Leanne, you've asked that. But ultimately, there's, like I said, there's a range of options that you can we can support you with. If you are interested in learning more, then there's some resources on our website. There's the open courses you can book onto, or you can ultimately just contact one of us and we'll give you the opportunity to go through what you're trying to achieve and where could action learning fit in and how could we support. If you would like to book onto the courses, we are offering, just for those people that have turned up on here and have obviously stayed to the end as well, a 5% discount when you book online, or when you come and talk to us for an in-house solution, then please reference that you've been on here, and then we'll give you a discount on that as well. But I just checked that there's no final questions before we then close that. Cool. Anything else from you, Daisy or Nick?
No, I'm happy. I've really enjoyed the session, actually. I don't know. I'm curious as to what happened in your groups, but we had a jazzy session. And Dan, I know you had questions about training with us. I'm assuming we've answered those now, but if you want to chip in with anything, just shout. Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it.
Yep. Cool. Well, thank you very much. And like I said, get into contact if we can help, or you want to talk anything through.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you all very much. We'll close there.
Okay.
All the best.
Bye now.